The Duke only wanted a governess for his twin daughters until he saw her dance in the rain, wearing the same necklace his dead wife was buried with. Now, every secret in his mansion is clawing its way back to the surface, and one truth could destroy them all. If you're already hooked in for today's story and ready to enjoy it, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I will be glad to hear from you. Now, let us begin. The train of mist rolled low over the Yorkshire moors as Eliza Dorn clutched her worn shawl tightly against the chill. The carriage jolted over a rut in the road, and her few belongings clinked together in the basket beside her. A tattered book of hymns, a pair of mended gloves, and her late mother's silver brooch. "Ravenshire Manor, miss. Just beyond that rise," the driver called out, his voice muffled by the fog. Eliza leaned forward, her pulse quickening. Somewhere beyond the swirling mist stood the estate of His Grace the Duke of Ashbourne, the man whose letter, written in an elegant, decisive hand, had offered her both employment and escape. She pressed a trembling hand to her chest. It had been 6 weeks since her father's passing, and the London boarding house where she'd been teaching music lessons could no longer pay its staff. This position, governess to the Duke's 6-year-old twin daughters, was her last hope for stability. But as the manor came into view, her breath caught. Ravenshire was no ordinary estate. Its towering spires reached through the mist like dark fingers against a pale sky, its windows gleaming like cold mirrors. Yet beneath its grandeur, something about it felt lonely. "Have you worked in a noble house before?" the driver asked, handing her down. "Not one such as this," she admitted softly. "Then mind yourself, miss," he said, lowering his voice. "They say His Grace has not smiled since the Duchess died. Keeps to himself, that one. The twins barely speak, and the ballroom hasn't known laughter in years." The words sent a shiver down Eliza's spine. She thanked him and stepped forward, her shoes crunching on the gravel path. The great oak doors loomed ahead. Before she could lift the brass knocker, they opened soundlessly, revealing a tall, somber butler. "Miss Dorn, I presume?" "Yes," she murmured, adjusting her shawl. "His Grace is expecting you." She followed him through a grand hall lined with portraits of stern ancestors and chandeliers that glittered coldly above polished floors. Each footstep echoed, lonely and hollow. When the butler stopped before a study door and knocked, her heart raced. "Enter," came a deep, commanding voice. Inside, the Duke sat behind a mahogany desk, his profile carved in sharp light. The kind of face that might have been chiseled from stone, cold, proud, and devastatingly handsome. He rose when she curtsied. "Eliza Dorn," he said, his tone clipped. "Lady Brigham recommended you. I trust you are capable of handling 2 spirited children." "I will do my very best, Your Grace." His gaze lingered a second too long, as though assessing more than her credentials. Then he turned away. "You will find the twins unusual," he said. "They require patience." Eliza nodded, though she could not ignore the faint sorrow that clung to his voice. As she left the study, led toward the east wing, she passed a set of double doors slightly ajar. Beyond them, she glimpsed an empty ballroom bathed in dust-filtered light, its marble floor scarred with footprints that seemed frozen in time. Something about it called to her. Later, when she thought herself alone, she would return to that room and dance. But little did she know she wouldn't be alone. Have you ever walked into a place that felt alive with secrets, where the air itself seemed to hold its breath? Tell me in the comments below, what would you have felt stepping into Ravenshire Manor for the first time? The east wing of Ravenshire Manor was a world apart from the solemn grandeur of the rest of the house. Soft morning light filtered through mullioned windows, casting pale gold across faded wallpaper and half-forgotten toys. Mrs. Harland, the housekeeper, a stout woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense voice, walked briskly ahead. "The twins are in the nursery, Miss Dorn. I'll warn you now, they're cleverer than most grown folk I know. But they've not taken kindly to the last few governesses." "How many have there been?" Eliza asked carefully. Mrs. Harland pursed her lips. "4 in the past year. His grace demands perfection in all things, especially where his daughters are concerned. Eliza nodded, though her heart squeezed at the thought. Perfection often grows where love has died. When they reached the nursery door, Mrs. Harland hesitated. They've been without a mother since they were barely 4. His grace, he blames himself. But don't speak of it. Ever. The woman left her there. Eliza drew a steadying breath and opened the door. Inside, 2 identical girls sat at a small table, painting quietly. Their golden curls fell in soft waves around pale faces that mirrored each other perfectly, though one's expression was curious and bright while the other's was guarded, almost suspicious. "Good morning," Eliza greeted, her voice warm but gentle. "I'm Miss Dorn, your new governess." The curious twin looked up first. "You're younger than the last one." "Am I?" Eliza smiled. "That must mean I have more energy for games." The guarded one arched a brow. "We don't play games. Father says they're a waste of time." "Does he now?" Eliza knelt so she was eye level with them. "Well then, perhaps we'll play games that teach without seeming like learning." The curious twin's mouth twitched in a smile. "I'm Lily, and that's my sister, Rose." "Lily and Rose," Eliza repeated, her heart softening. "2 of the loveliest flowers in the garden." The quieter twin, Rose, looked away, her brush stilling mid-stroke. "Our mother used to say that," she whispered. Silence hung heavy for a heartbeat. Eliza felt it, the absence that filled the room like unspoken grief. She gently rose and looked around. The nursery, though large and well-appointed, lacked laughter. Even the dolls on the shelves seemed untouched, their porcelain faces staring blankly. "I hear you both play the pianoforte?" she asked, trying to shift the mood. Lily nodded. "A little. We haven't played since Mama—" She stopped herself. Eliza crossed to the corner where the instrument stood beneath a white cloth. She lifted it carefully, letting the dust float into the sunlight. "Then we shall play again, not for lessons, but for joy." Rose frowned. "Father doesn't like music anymore." Eliza smiled softly. "Then we'll play when he isn't listening." Both girls giggled for the first time, a sound so pure that it made something stir within Eliza's chest. When she finally left them that afternoon, she felt their small eyes following her, cautious yet hopeful. In the corridor, she nearly collided with the Duke himself. He was descending the grand staircase, his stride purposeful, his expression unreadable. "Miss Dorn," he said, voice low, "I trust the children were manageable." "They are remarkable, Your Grace," she replied. "They only need to be seen for who they are, not what they've lost." His eyes flickered, just for a heartbeat, with something she couldn't name. "You speak boldly for someone in her position." "Forgive me," she said quickly, bowing her head. "It was not my intention to offend." But as he walked past her, she caught the faintest echo of a sigh, half sorrow, half longing. Perhaps she thought the Duke's silence was not born of pride, but pain. Do you think children can heal a broken heart faster than time ever could? Comment below. Would you have dared to challenge a Duke's silence the way Eliza just did? The 3rd evening at Ravenshire Manor began like the 2 before it. Quiet, ordered, suffocatingly perfect. Dinner for the household was served promptly at 7. The long dining hall, lit by crystal chandeliers, gleamed with polished silver and a fire that seemed to burn only for form's sake. The Duke, seated at the head of the table, ate in silence while his daughters fidgeted under the weight of etiquette. Eliza, seated near the end as custom demanded, observed everything quietly. The practiced calm of the servants, the echo of every utensil, the palpable absence of laughter. Lily shifted restlessly. "May I be excused, Father?" "Not yet," the Duke said without looking up. "We have guests arriving tomorrow, and you will remember your manners." Eliza caught the faint disappointment in the girl's eyes and the subtle slump of Rose's shoulders. When dinner finally ended, the twins whispered something to each other and darted off down the corridor before their father could object. Eliza rose to follow, but the Duke's voice stopped her. "Miss Dorn." She turned, surprised. "Your Grace?" His gaze lingered on her for a moment longer than was necessary. "You've managed to keep the girls content these past few days. That is no small feat." "Thank you, Your Grace. They are bright, imaginative children. They only need space to be children again." His jaw tightened slightly, a shadow passing behind his eyes. Imagination is dangerous. It distracts them from discipline, and discipline is what preserves this family's name. Eliza hesitated. "Forgive me, but sometimes imagination is what keeps a heart alive." For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, without another word, he turned and walked away, his footsteps echoing through the hall like slow thunder. Later that night, when the house had gone still, Eliza went to check on the girls before bed. The nursery door was ajar. Inside, the twins were huddled near the hearth, whispering excitedly. "What are you two up to?" she asked softly. Lily grinned. "We found something. Come see." They pulled her toward the adjoining corridor and into a forgotten room she hadn't noticed before, dusty, dark, and filled with covered furniture. "This used to be the ballroom," Rose whispered, eyes wide with both awe and fear. "Mama used to dance here." Eliza stepped further in. The moonlight from tall windows fell across the floor, illuminating faded patterns of gold inlaid on marble. She could almost hear music in the air, a memory lingering like perfume. Without thinking, she stepped into the light. She moved instinctively, her slippers gliding over the cold marble, her arms lifting as if guided by the ghost of melody itself. The girls watched in fascination as she twirled softly, her skirt whispering against the silence. "Miss Dorn!" Lily gasped, giggling. "You dance like a fairy!" Eliza laughed, breathless, her cheeks flushed. "Hush, you'll wake the whole house." But she had already woken someone. From the shadow of the corridor beyond the door, the Duke stood unseen, his hand resting against the frame. The moonlight spilled over her as she turned, her hair gleaming like spun gold, her face alight with joy. The kind of joy his house had not seen in years. For the first time since his wife's passing, something stirred in him that he did not expect and could not quite name. He stepped back silently, his heartbeat unsteady, and left before she could notice him. That night, Eliza closed the door to the ballroom with a quiet smile. The girls had gone to bed happy for the first time in months. But somewhere in the vast echoing halls of Ravenshire, a new kind of silence had begun to grow. The kind that listens, not mourns. The days that followed seemed to stretch like golden thread through the fabric of Ravenshire Manor. For the first time in years, laughter echoed through its corridors. Eliza's lessons with the twins became small adventures, reading beneath the lilacs, arithmetic disguised as treasure hunts. Music played softly on the long, silent pianoforte. Lily and Rose bloomed under her care. Their cheeks regained color. Their eyes sparkled with curiosity. Even the servants whispered that the house breathed differently when Miss Dorn entered a room. And though she tried not to notice, Eliza often felt his presence, or the Duke's, lingering like the shadow of a candle flame. He had begun appearing unexpectedly, a figure at the doorway of the schoolroom, watching quietly as she taught, a silhouette at the far end of the garden path as the twins gathered flowers. He said little, but his eyes followed her with an intensity that made her pulse falter. One afternoon, after the children had gone riding with their tutor, Eliza was in the music room turning the pages of a songbook. She did not hear him enter until he spoke. "You play," he said softly. She turned, startled. "I do, Your Grace, though not as well as I teach." "Play something?" he said. Not an order exactly, more a request, gently spoken, as though he were asking her to wake something sleeping inside him. Eliza hesitated, then sat at the pianoforte. Her fingers brushed the ivory keys. The melody she chose was soft, a waltz her mother used to hum while sweeping the cottage floors. As the notes filled the room, the Duke closed his eyes. He hadn't realized how much he missed sound. Not the sound of conversation or duty, but of life. When the final note faded, she looked up. He was staring at her, not as an employer might look upon a governess, but as a man seeing light after a long winter. That was... His voice faltered. He turned away. Beautiful. Eliza rose quickly, flustered. Forgive me, Your Grace. I didn't mean to overstep. He shook his head. No, you didn't. Silence settled between them, thick with everything neither dared say. She gathered her sheet music, her fingers trembling slightly. The twins enjoy when I play during lessons. It helps them concentrate. Then you must continue, he said, his tone curt again. But his eyes betrayed him. They lingered, soft, uncertain. After he left, Eliza sank back onto the piano bench, her heart racing. What am I doing? She thought. He is a duke. I am no one. Yet, as she looked toward the ballroom doors, the same place she had danced under the moonlight, she felt something stronger than fear. Longing. The next morning, as the children painted in the garden, a storm rolled in from the moors. Wind lashed through the windows, scattering petals across the marble floors. Rose shrieked with laughter, chasing the gusts until a clap of thunder cracked above. The girls screamed and fled toward the house, but the sudden storm caught them halfway across the courtyard. Eliza! Mrs. Harland cried. Without hesitation, Eliza ran out into the rain. Her skirt clung to her legs, her hair plastered against her cheeks as she scooped up Lily and shielded Rose under her arm. The Duke appeared in the doorway, eyes wide, rain soaking his coat as he rushed forward. He reached them just as another thunderclap rolled across the sky. Inside! He ordered, lifting Rose himself. When they burst into the great hall, dripping wet and breathless, the twins clung to Eliza, laughing and crying at once. The Duke's gaze flickered, from his daughters' flushed faces to Eliza's drenched dress, the fabric clinging to her as she comforted them. Something broke inside him, something he had held closed for years. He stepped closer. You risked yourself for them. She met his eyes, rain still dripping from her lashes. I would do so again. For a moment, time itself seemed to pause. The only sound was their ragged breathing and the storm fading beyond the walls. He wanted desperately to say something more, but instead he turned sharply away. Have the fire stoked in the nursery, he said to the butler. See that Miss Dorn has dry clothes. And with that, he left, his footsteps echoing down the corridor like a man fleeing his own heartbeat. That night, alone in his study, the Duke poured himself a brandy he didn't touch. His reflection stared back from the dark window, stern, cold, and yet alive in a way that frightened him. He closed his eyes and saw her again. Her face lifted toward the storm, arms wrapped around his daughters. The fire in the grate crackled softly, and beneath its warmth something deeper smoldered, something dangerous. He whispered to the empty room, What have you done to me, Miss Dorn? Have you ever tried to fight a feeling you knew you shouldn't have, but couldn't silence it anyway? Be honest. What would you do if you were in the Duke's place tonight? The storm passed, but something had shifted within Ravenshire's walls. The air felt heavier, not with grief as before, but with expectation. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the tall windows, catching dust motes that danced like golden fireflies. Eliza stood in the schoolroom with the twins, reading from A Midsummer Night's Dream. The girls giggled over Puck's mischievous tricks. Would you like to act it out? Eliza asked playfully. Lily gasped. Can we? Rose's eyes sparkled. Papa could be the Duke. Eliza laughed softly. I'm sure His Grace is far too busy for such mischief. But later that afternoon, when the girls begged their father to attend their play, he surprised everyone by saying yes. When Eliza entered the drawing room that evening, the Duke was already seated, one arm resting on the chair's carved lion head, his expression unreadable. The girls performed with unrestrained joy. Rose forgot half her lines, Lily burst into laughter halfway through, and Puck, played by their pup, Tilly, decided the stage was an excellent place for a nap. Eliza couldn't stop smiling. The Duke's lips twitched once, twice, and then he laughed, a deep, rich sound that startled everyone, himself included. The twins stared in wonder, then flung themselves at him, laughing with relief. "You do laugh," Rose squealed. He caught them both in his arms, his eyes warm. And when they met Eliza's, the laughter softened into something that stole her breath. For a moment, it was as if the ghosts of Ravenshire were silenced. The late Duchess's shadow, the years of mourning, all faded into the glow of that fragile, shared happiness. But happiness, as Eliza was learning, was a fleeting visitor in great houses. The next day, as she passed the study, Eliza overheard raised voices. "She's unsuitable," came the clipped tones of Lady Agatha Wren, the Duke's elder sister. "A governess? You'd ruin yourself, Albert. The ton would tear you apart." "I have no intention of—" "Oh, please." Her voice sharpened. "You think no one sees it? The servants talk. The children adore her. And you— Enough!" The Duke's voice cracked like thunder. Eliza froze. There was silence, then Lady Agatha's low hiss. "You forget your duty. She is beneath us, and if you do not act soon, she will be the ruin of this family's name." Footsteps neared. Eliza darted into the shadows of the hallway just as Lady Agatha swept out, her perfume thick and suffocating. When the Duke emerged moments later, he looked different, as though the laughter from the night before had been carved out of him. "Eliza, Miss Dorn," he said, stopping short as he saw her. His eyes flickered with something between longing and restraint. "You should not be in this corridor." "I was returning a book," she said quickly, clutching the leather volume to her chest. His jaw tightened. "Be careful, Miss Dorn. There are expectations in this house, appearances that must be maintained." Her heart stung at the formal tone. "Of course, Your Grace." He hesitated, his hands curling into fists at his sides. "You have done well with the children. You've given them laughter again. For that I am grateful." And then, as if the words cost him too much, he turned away. That night, Eliza couldn't sleep. She paced her small chamber, the moonlight spilling through her window like silver silk. Why had she let her heart betray her? Why had she imagined he could ever see her as more than a governess? But even as she thought it, tears welled in her eyes. Because she had seen something in his gaze, something that terrified her. The following evening, Mrs. Harland entered Eliza's room, carrying a folded gown of soft blue silk. "His Grace requests your presence at dinner tonight," she said with a knowing smile. Eliza's heart stopped. "Dinner? With the family?" Mrs. Harland nodded. "The twins insisted. Said you'd promised to tell the rest of that story about the sailor and the moon." Eliza's hands trembled as she unfolded the gown. It was beautiful, far beyond anything she had ever worn. When she entered the dining hall that night, conversation stilled. The Duke rose to his feet. His eyes swept over her, and for a brief, dangerous heartbeat, all his careful restraint vanished. She curtsied. "Your Grace." "Miss Dorn." Throughout the meal, laughter came easily, at least from the children. But beneath the warmth of candlelight, tension hummed like a violin string. Every glance, every accidental brush of fingers when passing a dish felt charged, forbidden. When dinner ended, the twins begged for one dance before bedtime. "Just one, Papa," Lily pleaded. Eliza smiled. "You should dance with them, Your Grace." But Rose shook her head. "No, you dance with him. You're the better dancer." The Duke froze. So did Eliza. The room seemed to shrink, the air thickening as he extended a hesitant hand. "Miss Dorn?" She hesitated only a moment before placing her hand in his. Music began softly, the same waltz she had played days before. They moved slowly at first. Her hand rested lightly in his, her other trembling against his shoulder. Their eyes met. And in that moment, the world fell away. The chandeliers blurred, the candles flickered, and the Duke of Ravenshire, a man of stone and sorrow, fell in love. It was in the way his breath hitched when she smiled, the way he forgot to count the steps, and when the music ended, neither moved. The silence between them was no longer empty. It was alive. "Eliza," he whispered. Her name, for the first time, spoken not as a servant's, but as a woman's. But before either could speak again, a sharp voice cut through the air. "Well," came Lady Agatha's icy tone from the doorway. "What a charming scene. Every love story has a moment it must hide or be destroyed. If you were Eliza, standing there beneath the candlelight, your heart exposed, the Duke's sister watching, would you deny your feelings, or finally fight for them?" Lady Agatha's voice sliced through the room like a blade. Every head turned. The twins froze mid-giggle, Eliza's hand still resting in the Duke's. "Albert," Lady Agatha said slowly, her tone dripping with venom, "must the servants now join us for our waltzes as well?" Eliza stepped back instantly, her face pale. "Forgive me, Your Grace," she murmured, lowering her gaze. The children," Agatha interrupted, "should not be made a spectacle." "Agatha," the Duke said sharply, "that's enough." Her eyes flared. "Enough? When half the staff have already whispered of your attachment? When your daughter's governess stands in your arms before the servants' eyes?" The twins looked from one adult to another, confused and frightened. "Go to your rooms, my dears," Eliza said gently, her voice trembling. "It's all right." Lily hesitated. "But Miss Dorne—" "Now," the Duke said quietly. His tone left no room for argument. Once they had gone, the silence that followed was suffocating. Agatha's glare could have cut glass. "Do you think society will forgive you for this? A duke consorting with a common woman, a governess?" "She is not," he began. But Eliza stopped him with a shake of her head. "Please, Your Grace, don't." Her eyes glistened with unshed tears. "Lady Agatha is right. I've overstepped. My position here has always been one of service, not sentiment." The Duke turned to her, something breaking in his voice. "Eliza, don't do this." She forced a smile that barely reached her eyes. "It's for the best. For the children. For your name." Then she curtsied and walked from the room before her courage failed her. That night, Eliza packed her belongings by candlelight. Every book, every quill, every reminder of the life she had almost believed was hers. Her hands trembled as she folded the blue silk gown, the one he had asked her to wear. A knock came at the door. She froze. "Eliza." His voice came softly through the wood. She closed her eyes. "Please, Your Grace, don't come in." He ignored her plea. The door opened. He stood there, pale, his composure gone. "You mean to leave?" "Yes." "For her?" "For you," she whispered. "Because you must protect what's left of your world, and I—" Her voice broke. "I've nothing to give but my heart, and that's already yours." He crossed the room in 3 strides, took her trembling hands in his. "You think I care for society's whispers? I've been dead inside for years, Eliza. You've made me feel again." She shook her head. "And what of your daughters? What of your title? Would you have them mocked? Would you risk everything just to love me?" His silence was answer enough. Tears spilled down her cheeks. "That is why I must go." She turned, but his hand caught her wrist. "If you walk out that door, Eliza, I will never forgive myself." She looked at him then, truly looked, and saw not the Duke of Ravensshire, but the man behind the title, a man torn between heart and duty. "Then forgive me instead," she whispered, "for loving you when I shouldn't." She pulled free and left him standing there, the wind from the open window lifting the curtains like ghostly wings around him. The next morning, Ravensshire Manor was silent. The twins refused to eat, asking where Miss Dorne had gone. The Duke gave no answer. He sat in his study long after the candles had burned low, staring at the letter she had left behind, the ink smudged by tears. Your Grace. I am grateful for every kindness, every smile, every moment that made me forget who I was and remember what I might have been. But I cannot stay where my presence brings you harm. Tell the girls I love them dearly. Tell them to keep dancing. He read the letter once, then again, and again. Outside, the rain began to fall, steady, relentless, like the echo of all the words left unspoken. Weeks passed. Whispers of scandal spread through Hampshire like wildfire. Some said the governess had been dismissed, others that she had been sent away after shaming the household. But the Duke said nothing. He rode out daily to the cliffs beyond the estate, the same cliffs where Eliza used to take the girls to sketch the sea. He would stand there, coat whipping in the wind, staring into the horizon as if waiting for her silhouette to appear among the gulls. Inside the manor, her absence was a wound that would not heal. The laughter had gone. The music room stood silent, the pianoforte untouched. Mrs. Harland would later say she once found the Duke there alone, fingers resting on the keys, playing a melody he did not know he remembered. Winter came early that year. The gardens of Ravenshire lay under a blanket of frost, their roses brittle ghosts of summer. The manor's windows glowed faintly in the gray light, but inside, the house felt colder than the world outside. It had been 3 months since Eliza left. The Duke's once proud bearing had withered into quiet melancholy. He spoke little, ate less, and though he continued his duties, it was clear to all who served him that the man who once commanded armies now waged a losing war against his own heart. Mrs. Harland often found him in the children's schoolroom, seated at the little desk where Eliza used to teach, his hand resting upon a worn storybook. The Tales of Avalon, Eliza's favorite. Even the twins had changed. Charlotte grew solemn, quick to anger, her questions sharp and bitter. Lily had taken to wandering the halls at night, clutching one of Eliza's handkerchiefs like a talisman. The Duke's guilt deepened with each passing day. It was on one of those bleak mornings that a letter arrived. The Duke recognized the handwriting before the seal was broken, fine, careful script that once traced his name with tenderness. But the letter was not from Eliza. It was from a Reverend Ashton of Dover, informing him that Miss Eliza Dorn had taken up a position at a small parish school by the coast, instructing village children and assisting with the orphanage. Her work is admirable. The letter read, "But I fear her health has been delicate since her arrival. The sea air does not agree with her constitution." The Duke's hand trembled as he read those words. By the time Mrs. Harland entered the room, his coat was already in his hand. "Your Grace, have the horses saddled. I'm going to Dover." The journey took 2 days through sleet and bitter wind. When he reached the coastal town, the sea lay before him like molten steel beneath a cloudy sky. Waves crashed against the rocks with a sound like grief itself. He found her at the edge of the orphanage yard, wrapped in a shawl too thin for the cold, her hair tucked beneath a modest bonnet. She was kneeling in the snow, laughing softly as she helped a small boy build a crooked snowman. For a moment, the Duke simply watched her. Her laughter, faint, fragile, carried across the yard and struck him like sunlight breaking through clouds. Then she turned and saw him. Her breath caught. The snowball slipped from her hand. "Your Grace," she whispered, rising to her feet. "Eliza," he said quietly, "you look pale." "And you," she replied, her voice trembling, "look very far from home." He took a step closer, but she retreated, glancing toward the children. "You shouldn't be here. The people here, they talk, and you let them talk," he said. "I've spent half my life imprisoned by whispers. I won't spend the rest haunted by what I never dared to say." Her lips parted, but no words came. He reached into his coat and drew out her letter, creased, worn, read 100 times. "You left me this, but you forgot something." Her brow furrowed. What could I have forgotten? He stepped closer still, until his breath mingled with hers in the icy air. "You forgot that I loved you, that I still love you." Eliza shook her head, tears spilling down her cheeks. Please, Your Grace, don't. You'll destroy yourself, your name, your daughters. My daughters, he said, voice raw. Ask for you every night. Lily prays you'll come back before Christmas. Charlotte pretends not to care, but I hear her reading your stories to the younger one when she thinks I'm asleep. Eliza covered her mouth with a trembling hand. He took her fingers gently. You think you are protecting me, Eliza, but you are tearing the heart out of the only life worth living. Her resolve crumbled. Albert? She breathed, the first time she had ever dared to say his name. He closed his eyes at the sound. Come home, please. I can't, she whispered. It's not my home. Then let me make it yours. That night, he lodged in the small coastal inn. Eliza refused to return with him. Not yet. You must think of the children, she said softly. Their world is not the same as mine. But the next morning, as the Duke prepared to leave, a small hand tugged at Eliza's skirt. The same orphan boy from before, holding a crude wooden toy. You're sad, miss, the boy said. You shouldn't be sad. Eliza knelt beside him. And what should I do instead, Harry? The boy smiled, showing a missing front tooth. Go where you're loved. That's what Father Ashton says. Go where you're loved, and God will follow. Her breath hitched. She looked toward the Duke, who stood by his carriage, watching her as if afraid to hope. Slowly, she rose, walked across the yard, and stopped before him. I cannot promise to be what the world expects of a duchess, she said. Then be what I expect, he replied. Be the woman who made my daughters laugh again. Be the woman who made me believe in tomorrow. Her tears froze on her lashes as she whispered, Then, take me home. He exhaled, a sound that was almost a sob, and drew her into his arms. The snow fell quietly around them, and the sea roared like applause. Would you have trusted love enough to go back like Eliza did? Or would fear and pride have held you captive a little longer? And when she spoke her vow, voice trembling but certain, I would follow him anywhere, even the wind seemed to still. The twins clapped and cheered, tears streaming down their cheeks. As the Duke kissed her, his duchess now, the great doors of the chapel opened and sunlight poured in like a benediction. For the first time in years, Ravenshire felt alive again. Later, when evening fell, a grand dinner was held not for nobles, but for everyone. Servants, gardeners, tutors, and stable hands. The Duke himself raised a glass to them all. Let the world say what it will, he said. Here at Ravenshire, we remember not names or titles, but hearts, and the courage it takes to love. Cheers erupted. Even the most stoic servants wept, and as the musicians began to play, Eliza stood from her seat. The Duke offered his hand. Will you dance with me, Duchess? She smiled through tears. Always. They danced slowly beneath the flickering candlelight, the twins twirling around them, laughter filling the hall once more. The same melody that had once started their ruin now sealed their redemption. If you were the Duke or Eliza, would you have risked everything? Your name, your comfort, your world? For love? Or would you have bowed to what society expected of you? Would you like me to continue with 8 Part 9, the satisfying conclusion? The final emotional ending where we see the Duke, Eliza, and the twins years later healed, united, and forever changed by love. 3 years later, Ravenshire had changed. Where once the corridors echoed with cold silence, now laughter spilled freely from every hall. Music floated from the drawing room in the evenings. Children's footsteps pattered down the grand staircase in the mornings. The great house had become what it had not been in years, a home. The gardens, once untended, now bloomed brighter than ever. Roses climbed the trellises again, Eliza's doing. She'd always said every root deserved another chance to blossom, no matter how harsh the winter. The villagers spoke fondly of her now. At first, they had whispered, the governess who married a duke. but whispers faded with time, and kindness endured. She visited the orphanage often, bringing baskets of fruit, books, and toys. Her Grace, they called her with a smile, though to many she was simply Lady Eliza, the woman who never forgot where she came from. As for the Duke, he was no longer the solemn man who had watched his life pass from behind the armor of grief. Albert Harrington laughed again. He rode with his daughters through the meadows, taught them fencing, and even, to the endless amusement of the staff, attempted painting beside his wife on sunny afternoons. "Your Grace," Mrs. Harland often said, "you've taken to domestic bliss far too well." He would smile. "Call me Albert. My wife insists it suits me better."
One golden afternoon, Eliza sat beneath the great oak in the garden, a book open on her lap. Beside her, the twins, now 10 and 12, practiced their sketching. Charlotte was precise, serious as ever, her pencil strokes deliberate. Lily was impatient, smudging the page with laughter and ink. "Mama," Lily said suddenly, "did you ever think you'd live in a place like this?" Eliza smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her daughter's face. "No, my love. I thought my life would be small and quiet. But sometimes, when we least expect it, life gives us a dance we didn't know we were meant to join." Charlotte looked up, curious. "Is that how you met Papa?" Eliza's eyes softened. "Yes, though truthfully it was the children who taught me to dance first." Lily giggled. "You mean us?" "Exactly." She tapped Lily's nose with her finger. "You two were the reason," he smiled again. "The reason we all found our way home." The Duke's voice came from behind them, warm and deep. "And the reason I nearly lost my heart watching your mother spin barefoot in the nursery." They turned. He was standing in the sunlight, older perhaps, but with the kind of peace that no title could buy. Eliza rose as he approached. "You were supposed to be meeting with the magistrate," she teased. "I was," he said, kissing her cheek, "but my Duchess outranks any magistrate in Hampshire." The twins groaned playfully. "Papa," he smiled, taking Eliza's hand. "Shall we dance, my love? Here, in the garden?" "Why not? It's where everything truly began." She laughed softly, placing her hand in his. "Then yes, always yes." And so they danced, slowly, gracefully, among the roses and golden light, the laughter of their daughters surrounding them like music. As the sun began to set, Charlotte and Lily ran ahead toward the manor, their voices echoing down the lane. Eliza leaned against her husband's shoulder, watching the light fade into hues of amber and violet. Albert spoke quietly. "Do you ever think of that night, when everything seemed lost?" She smiled faintly. "Often, because it reminds me how far love can pull us back from the edge." He kissed her forehead. "You saved us, Eliza. You saved me." She looked up at him, eyes shining. "No, my Duke, we saved each other." That evening, as the lamps were lit and the house settled into the gentle hum of night, the twins played softly on the pianoforte. The same melody Eliza had once danced to long ago. The Duke and Duchess sat together by the fire, her head on his shoulder, his hand resting over hers. Outside, the snow began to fall again, soft, silent, and full of memory. And somewhere between the flicker of the firelight and the sound of their children's laughter, Eliza whispered, almost to herself, "Love is the only dance that never truly ends." If love cost you everything you thought you were, but gave you everything you never knew you needed, would you take that chance? Tell me in the comments, what does true love mean to you? The end.
Thank you for watching this story to the end. Don't forget to subscribe to Olivia's Tales. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.